What if Luke and Leia were raised by Mandalorians? In the main timeline, Luke was sent out to live with his aunt and uncle on Tatooine under the watchful eye of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Leia went to live with Bail and his wife on Alderaan. However, on one of our old videos, one of our viewers asked what if instead Luke and Leia had grown up as Mandalorians. That's the scenario that we'll be diving into today. So snuggle in with a tauntaun on this cold weather, grab a cup of warm caf, and let's get right into this wild and wacky what if scenario. Do you know what it takes to make videos like this? Our YouTube channel is a self-supported one, composed of a series of artists that work every day to bring you top quality content. Some of our videos take over 24 hours to develop, including script writing, narration, and editing. If you like our content and enjoy listening to our videos, you can help give us a little bit of support. For only $5 a month, you can become a Bantha Stew Patreon supporter, stay in touch with our latest projects, suggest changes, and even be featured in future videos. That will help our little channel stay funded and help us accomplish our dream of creating a successful YouTube channel. Now, without further delay, let's get into today's story. Our story begins on the asteroid belt where Luke and Leia were born. After Padme's death, the conversation begins as to who the children should be raised by. Bail puts his name forward, and Yoda proposes that Obi-Wan take Luke to Tatooine. Initially, Obi-Wan completely agrees. However, upon further consideration, Obi-Wan thinks of another idea. He remembers his old flame, Duchess Satine, and how at one point he had considered leaving the Order for her to settle down on Mandalore. He knew the Mandalorians are an incredibly family-based culture, and he also knows that the royal family on Mandalore would be not fond of the Empire. Beyond that, Obi-Wan knows that if the two children are raised by Mandalorians, they would learn to defend themselves if the Empire ever tried to harm them. He floats this idea to the others, and surprisingly, they actually agree. Yoda, Bail, and Obi-Wan make the decision to send Luke and Leia to the royal family on Mandalore. How does this decision impact the rest of our story? Let's find out. When Obi-Wan contacts Bo-Katan as he approaches Mandalore, initially, she is shocked. With his current political upheaval in the galaxy, the last thing that she expects to happen was to see the old romantic interest of her late sister coming to her and requesting that she raise children. At first, she absolutely refuses. Bo has far too many other things on her mind during this time, especially given the fact that Mandalore is currently divided into many camps. Following Maul's departure from their planet, small conflicts were breaking out between the various noble houses of Mandalore, some of whom believe that joining the Empire is the best choice for their people. However, Bo also sees some political opportunity in taking the children into the royal family. With the news, she could momentarily distract her population from this political upheaval, and she could unify them behind some good news. So, Bo agrees to take the children under her wing. When Obi-Wan arrives on Mandalore, he hands the children over to Bo, who makes it clear that she isn't doing this for Obi-Wan, but that she's doing it in honor of Satine. Obi-Wan asks if he can stay on Mandalore, as he wants to be able to watch over the children from afar. Begrudgingly, Bo agrees. However, not wanting to cause further disunity in Mandalorian society, she tells him that he can live on Mandalore, but that he must change his identity and assimilate to Mandalorian culture. Obi-Wan, who knows a decent amount about Mandalorian culture already because of Satine, agrees, knowing that he would have to conceal his identity anyway if he were to hide from the Empire. With some spare credits, Obi-Wan buys himself a small apartment in the middle of Sundari, and he also takes time to forge himself some Beskar armor to better fit in with the evolving warrior society. While Obi-Wan settles into his new role, Bo announces the adoption of the twins to her people. She says that a close friend of her sister had asked that they be raised Mandalorian, and while he disagreed with Satine on many things, she had a lot of respect for Satine as a person, and for staying true to her convictions. She details to the Mandalorians the true story of what had taken place with Maul, and she also admits her place in what had happened. As the sister of Satine and as the successor of Pre Vizsla to the leadership of Death Watch, Bo-Katan vows that she will not only protect Mandalore from the encroachment of the Empire on her people, but that she will also search for Maul, and that she will raise these children in the most Mandalorian way possible. Bo says that she will raise them to become true Vode, and that they would be the future of the Mandalorian people. This seems to unify many of the houses behind her. She wants not only to crush crime, but also to ensure their self-determination from the Empire. As the years go on, Bo-Katan and the noble houses continue to militarize their society. Each of them develops not only their own soldiers, but they also commit to building a unified Sundari military. Obi-Wan, in the shadows, continues to train and learn how to use the Mandalorian weaponry. While he believes that a lot of it is uncivilized, he finds friends to train melee with, and he quickly adapts to the culture in which he now resides. Kenobi keeps a close eye on the news, too. He watches as Luke and Leia grow up together, and they always look so happy standing with their adopted mother in the planetary spotlight. Obi-Wan smiles as he hears of their success in academics, sees how well-spoken they are, and hears of their victories in combative competitions with their fellow Mandalorian students. He could tell that their Force sensitivity put them leagues above their peers, even if they didn't know of their Jedi heritage. While Bo is a hard mother, she is also clearly just as proud of the children as Obi-Wan is. Mandalore seems to slowly be returning to the grandeur that it had during the old days, and it looked like they could even be a powerful contest for the growing influence of the Galactic Empire. However, all of that changes in a matter of days. One day, unexpectedly, Bo-Katan sees a Star Destroyer appear in the skies above Mandalore. Her stomach drops and she begins to prepare her people for the worst. She lets her military commanders know that they should be prepared for action should the Empire choose to attack. However, surprisingly, the commander of the Star Destroyer reaches out peacefully, requesting that his commander, Moff Gideon, be allowed to visit Sundari with a delegation of Imperial diplomats. Bo, not seeing any issues with merely meeting with the Imperials, allows them to land, and she welcomes them to her palace. She takes Luke, Leia, and a handful from Mandalore to be part of her delegation of the finest soldiers to meet Gideon, intending to show him the might of Mandalore while simultaneously teaching the children a lesson about how Mandalorians conducted respectful diplomacy. At this point, Luke and Leia are about 10 years old, and they have learned a lot. However, they still have a long way to go, and Bo wants them to be well-rounded successors to her in the future. When Gideon lands, he's accompanied by a small contingent of military officers and death troopers. Bo-Katan greets him, and she escorts him to the palace. There, they sit at the same negotiation table that we see the Separatists and the Republic sitting at during the Clone Wars negotiation summits, and Gideon proposes a simple plan to Bo. He wants to see Mandalore integrated peacefully into the Empire. He tells Bo that they could use her people's skills, and that they would be greatly compensated by new investments into infrastructure and weaponry. In addition, the Empire promises to discover more efficient ways to use Beskar, and Gideon promises that Mandalorians would have full access to the results of their research. Bo considers this momentarily. However, she looks at Luke and Leia, who are clothed in the traditional Mandalorian clothes of royalty. Then, Bo thinks about her mission to find Maul and return the Darksaber to Mandalorian hands. She then looks Gideon directly in the eyes, and she tells him that she couldn't allow for her people to give themselves to a cause greater than Mandalore. Gideon nods, and he respectfully leaves the palace, appearing to understand her decision. Bo believes this to be the end of her troubles, and so she returns to managing Mandalore just as she had in the past. Soon, though, things begin to change. Gar Saxon leads a new faction to rise up against Bo-Katan, saying that she has accomplished nothing that she had promised when she unified the people. She couldn't find Maul, she didn't even have the Darksaber to command the people, and her kids, he didn't think they were good successors. Many folks hop on board with Saxon's alliance, and Mandalore starts to lose confidence in Bo-Katan. So, when Gar Saxon and his allies end up sacking the royal palace, many people are either apathetic or they're on his side. Someone who doesn't like this, though, is Obi-Wan Kenobi. As the raid on the palace is going on, he sees this and he sneaks in. He can sense Bo is in distress, and he can feel the presence of her children. Obi-Wan uses force speed to find the children, and he mind tricks the Mandalorian bodyguard who is protecting them into letting him into the room where they are. Obi-Wan enters the room, and he tells them that Bo had sent him to take them to a safer place. Obi-Wan takes the two children as Mandalore falls to Saxon and as Bo-Katan perishes in a glorious fight against her opponents. Saxon takes the mantle of leadership, and he ends up contacting Gideon to join the Empire. Obi-Wan escapes with the children to the moon of Concord Dawn, where he finds the Protectors. There, they grant him sanctuary with the royal children, and Obi-Wan begins to hone in on their Force abilities. Obi-Wan, after 5 years of living with the Protectors, believes that Luke and Leia, with his guidance, are ready to carry on his mother's quest. In addition, Gar Saxon believes the children to be dead, even though he never found their bodies. In his arrogance, he thinks that they have passed away and that Bo-Katan's legacy is gone for good. Maul is still out there somewhere, and after years of hiding from Saxon, Obi-Wan believes that the children will be ready to go back out in the galaxy, capable of defending themselves. On this journey, they end up briefly visiting Yoda on Dagobah and training with him. There, in the Darkside Cave, they find kyber crystals buried deep in the swamp, and they each face their fears about losing to Saxon and ending their family's honor. In the end, though, both of them emerge from the cave triumphant, and they both make their own lightsabers. The pair trains with them until the blades become extensions of their bodies. As Mandalorian warriors, both of the lightsabers end up being blue. They leave Dagobah stronger in the Force and stronger in their resolve. Obi-Wan thanks Yoda for helping them, and he says that it was a pleasure. Anything that could possibly help save the galaxy from Sidious in the future was a victory for Yoda. For the next 2 years, Obi-Wan takes Luke and Leia on their mother's quest to find the old Dathomirian who had damaged her people. While Obi-Wan does not believe in exacting revenge, he does believe in making the children stronger. In addition, their Mandalorian heritage would give the children an honor code to follow, and they would want to find Maul in order to grab the Darksaber and reunify Mandalore. Eventually, after searching the galaxy for many years and honing in on their Force abilities, Obi-Wan decides that it would be prudent for Luke and Leia to search Dathomir, Maul's birthplace. Upon arrival, they find him in his little nook with his strange collection of items from eras long past, including the Darksaber. Luke and Leia see Maul living in this state, and they take pity on him. In their Mandalorian way, they challenge Maul to a duel, as brother and sister, ready to reclaim the saber for Mandalore. Maul, who sees this as another chance to exact revenge upon Kenobi, gladly accepts, and he rushes towards the children with his twin saber ignited. However, Maul is old, and the Skywalkers are filled with useful vivacity and Mandalorian training. They end up defeating Maul quite easily, and they claim the Darksaber together, vowing to retake Mandalore from the dishonorable dealings of the Empire and the ignoble reign of Gar Saxon. Obi-Wan is proud, and he continues to vow to protect them, even if he didn't believe that they needed it. The trio returns to Sundari under the cover of darkness. Luke and Leia train more with the Darksaber on their way back to Mandalore, learning to wield its hefty weight. They learn that using the saber is like a dance, and the blade is their partner. They act together, and by doing so, they learn to use the skills that they have been training on in years, from Jedi training to their advantage. The brother-sister pair are deadly, and Obi-Wan knows that they have the potential to defeat Saxon and rule Mandalore together, as Mandalorians and as Jedi Knights. The group manages to sneak into Saxon's palace undetected. It turns out that the Imperial security isn't as beefy as the Empire likes to believe, and Obi-Wan is able to mind trick some of the Mandalorians that question them along the way. As the doors to the throne room are approached by Luke and Leia, they force push aside the Mandalorian guards with relative ease, and they strut into the throne room, both holding the Darksaber, and they challenge Gar Saxon to a duel. The other Mandalorians are shocked, especially since they know that the pair would have had to defeat Maul to get the saber due to Bo-Katan's constant reminders in the past of her mission. Gar Saxon, thinking again that this would be an easy challenge, which would solidify his rule as the Mandalore, along with ending House Kryze for good, accepts. Gar pulls out a vibroblade, activates his shields, and gets ready for an epic battle. This would be a battle for the heart of Mandalore, one that would go down in the songs for eternity. Soon, the future of the ancient warrior people would be decided. Gar Saxon immediately rushes in, ready for battle against the twins. He lets out a guttural battle cry, and he swings for Luke. Luke grabs the Darksaber from Leia, and he blocks Saxon's incoming attack. Leia activates her lightsaber, and she swings at Gar, who deflects the blade quickly with one of his wrist shields, looking at her with malice. Obi-Wan watches the three Mandalorians dance in their eloquent combat match, and he bites his nails. However, his initial anxiety is quelled as the Force flows through him. He sees Luke and Leia throwing the Darksaber to one another, each using it to parry Saxon's blows. Gar flies high in the air with his jetpack, and he fires his wrist rockets towards the twins, who knock them back at Gar with their lightsaber deflections. Eventually, Luke and Leia utilize an old plan that they had developed in training many years ago. Luke rushes forward, lunging at Saxon, prompting him to take the bait. Then, as Saxon charges towards Luke, Leia takes the Darksaber from her brother and flips over her foe, who attempts to burn her with a wrist flamethrower. However, Leia takes him by surprise, and he misses her, but only by a couple of inches. Or centimeters, sorry, I'm Canadian, so I'm going to use the metric system. Then, at the same time, Luke and Leia thrust their blades into Saxon from the front and the back, finding some of the weak spots in his Beskar armor and taking him out. Once again, as Gar Saxon's body falls to the floor, Luke and Leia grab the Darksaber together, thrusting it into the air. The Mandalorians bow, acknowledging that this was strange, but that the challenge had been issued by the pair. In addition, Bo had been grooming both of them to take her place as the ruler of Mandalore, so none of them found it completely abnormal that now they were here, taking the mantle of leadership on together. Because they had won in an honorable fashion, they are permitted to rule together. For the first time in history, Mandalorians submit to the joint rule of a brother and a sister, and Luke and Leia earn the trust of the Mandalorian people. Mandalore unifies under the oversight of the twins. Luke and Leia appoint Obi-Wan as their prime minister, which attracts the attention of Lord Vader himself. He senses Obi-Wan's presence, and he recognizes that face in galactic holo-media broadcasts. The twins believe that his appearance to have changed enough since his days as a Jedi so that the Empire wouldn't recognize him, but Vader would still know that face anywhere. The twins break ties with the Empire, uniting a charge against Gideon's occupying forces, and they break Mandalore's stance of neutrality, joining the rebellion. While they are not committed to the restoration of the New Republic, they do join the alliance because they see that it would be beneficial for Mandalore, which seeks self-determination. When Vader hears of this insubordination, he goes to Mandalore himself, landing under the cover of darkness. He senses the presence of his former master, and he marches into the Mandalorian throne room with his typical, cold demeanor. Each Mandalorian who tries to challenge him ends up quickly dead, unable to keep up with his mastery of the Force, much like the rebels in the hallway during Rogue One. When Vader reaches the throne room, he not only finds a Mandalorian war council in session, but he also sees prominent members of the Rebel Alliance in a meeting. He ignites his blade, and he begins an onslaught of those present. Luke, Leia, and Obi-Wan try to counter his advances, but to no avail. The Dark Lord shoves them aside, and he pries the Darksaber from the hands of the twins. Then he stares at Kenobi. As the Rebel and Mandalorian guards fire at Vader, he creates a shield around himself with the Force and absorbs their blast, focused entirely on Obi-Wan. The twins had made a grave error publicizing this appointment, even if they thought that he was disguised well enough. Vader duels him momentarily before disarming the old man and stabbing him, causing Obi-Wan to become one with the Force, and for his physical body to disappear. Vader then uses the Darksaber to slice off the limbs of his children, who can sense that he has a familiar presence to them, but they don't understand why, and he definitely knows that they seem familiar to him, even though they were adopted in the Kree's name during this timeline. Vader does them the ultimate dishonor for Mandalorians too. He keeps them alive. Vader proceeds to mow down all of the members of the Rebel High Command who are present in this meeting, including Bail Organa, General Dodonna, and General Reekin. Vader proceeds to kick the two rulers with his boot, knocking them unconscious, and he returns them to Coruscant in his shuttle to rot in Imperial prison. How do these events impact the story's finale? Well, let's keep going and find out. Vader, who now has the Darksaber legitimately, demands the loyalty of Mandalore. The people submit to the Masked Man, and they leave the Alliance to join the Empire. The remaining high-ranking leadership for the Mandalorians tell Vader all of the rebel secrets that they had known, allowing for the ISB to neutralize many threats to Imperial security. With the rebel military leadership shaken, Mon Mothma must find new leaders, and their alliance has to regroup, causing them to go deeper into the shadows. Vader frequently visits Luke and Leia in Imperial prison, keeping them alive on purpose, and he shows them how the people that once bowed to them now modeled their armor off of Vader's monstrous suit, adhering to their traditions and code. Mandalorian commandos become effective units within the Imperial military, and they are fantastic counters to rebel saboteurs. Vader tempts his children, telling them that he now knows of their true bloodline, and that they could rule the galaxy together as a family dynasty. However, Luke and Leia refuse to budge. Their loyalty to Mandalore and to House Kreese is admirable, and they rot in jail instead of giving in to temptation. Vader, as the ruler of Mandalore, becomes far more feared in the galaxy at large. The Mandalorians, who had once been a symbol of defiance against the Empire, had now become a symbol of its might. The galaxy descends into a dark, dark place. For now, at least, the Empire emerges on top. Hello there, Star Wars friends. I hope that you've enjoyed this what if scenario. If you did, I'd recommend checking out this other video, What If Anakin Ran Away with Padme and Left the Jedi Order. If you have any thoughts on this story, let us know in the comments. Would you like to see a part 2? If so, what do you think would happen next? Have a bantha-tacular rest of your day, folks, and as always, I hope that you've had your daily delicious dose of bantha stew.